Despite the lack of games in these last 13 years, Bleach has had a long history in this field, spanning multiple consoles, genres, and levels of quality, and over these last few months I have played every mainline Bleach game out there. But today, we're going to rank them. Some of these titles are surprisingly great, while others, not so much. So let's get to it. If you watched all the previous videos, you'll already know where I stand on a majority of these, but I'll try to better articulate how I feel about each of these games as opposed to my usual ramblings and ranting. That said, I don't want this video to be like 2 hours long, so don't expect an in-depth review for each one of these titles. And I'm going to rank them in the order that I played them, so first up on that list would be Shattered Blade. Now, Shattered Blade is a fun one to talk about, because the entire reason I even started this little series was because everyone said Shattered Blade was the worst Bleach game, and I just wanted to see if that was correct. After playing all of these, I don't think I would call it the worst, but it's not good. The story presentation leaves a lot to be desired. The graphics are about as good as you can get back then, I guess I would say, for the Wii. It could look worse, but it also could look better. I know the OST isn't something that's usually a focus of these sorts of games, but I can't remember a single song that stuck out to me in any way, and you guys know how I feel about good music in my video games. The roster, as far as I remember, was pretty decent, but the biggest drawback of this game is just the fact that its primary gameplay loop is motion controls, and they're not even good. I know an argument can be made that like motion controls can enhance certain games, but this just is not one of them. If this game had a traditional control scheme, I feel like it would be a lot better, and admittedly I played this on emulator. I did play this on an actual Wii back in my youth, where I didn't care for it much back then either. I had fun with it playing with my little brother, but aside from that, this game didn't really stick out to me. But playing it on emulator, you could say, definitely skewed my perception of it, because in that case, it wasn't just motion controls, but I was also using like an analog stick to replicate motion controls, and that was even worse. But when it's all said and done, Shattered Blade is just not that good of a game to me. If you feel differently, I would love to hear why, but in my humble opinion, Shattered Blade, no, not very good. But I wouldn't call it the worst, so in all fairness, I think I would give this a D. The only reason I won't put it in trash is because it's dumb fun if you're playing with somebody else. Like, I did have a good time playing this with my brother, so because it's at the very least dumb fun, I won't call it trash. I think the worst thing a video game can be is boring, and Shattered Blade, at the very least, is not boring. Next one on the list is this GameCube game that I can't remember the title of. I couldn't pronounce it anyway. Now, I played this one immediately after playing Shattered Blade, and this has a traditional control scheme, so right off the bat, I liked it more. Even with that traditional control scheme, this game still was not that good. But in all fairness, I feel like the things holding this one back are mainly a product of its time. I feel like if this same sort of game was made today, it would be better. I think it's just dated, and that's really the only thing that's particularly wrong with it. I feel like its gameplay systems were sound, it had a good idea, it had good foundations. It's just very jank, very old, and it's mainly just held back by that. I wouldn't call this trash, I wouldn't call this a bad game at all, but it just doesn't have a lot going for it. Not to the point that I would put it much higher on this list, but it is definitely better than Shattered Blade. Next one I played was Versus Crusade, another one for the Nintendo consoles. Now, this one I had only played because I got a comment saying that this was the best Bleach game, and I'm like, well, if I played the worst one, which was at the time Shattered Blade, then I should play the best one as well. And this is just one of those games that I never got to play because, like majority of these games, this was never released in the US. So growing up, I just never had access to it. I played it for the first time in that video, and it was no secret that I was having the time of my life, admittedly. This game was so much fun. I remember saying that it reminds me of Zenkai Battle Royale, and again, I don't think it plays anything like it, but it has a similar structure. I don't know what you would call that type of arena fighter, but it reminds me of that. But at the end of the day, it was just a lot of fun. That's really all I have to say about this game. It was just so much fun. This game too does have motion controls, but I feel like it utilizes it so much better than Shattered Blade, which goes back to that point I was saying where like you can argue that motion controls can enhance a game if done right. It was done wrong in Shattered Blade, but definitely done well in Versus Crusade. But I do think Versus Crusade could be better with a traditional control scheme, because again, I played it on emulator where I pretty much had to force it to work with the controller since there was no motion control options. And even then, it was still a lot of fun. So I would guess that with a Wiimote, with an actual Wii controller, actual motion controls, it could be better, it could be worse, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think Versus Crusade is a great game. Not the best, but definitely up there. And if I had to rank in all fairness, I think I would honestly, I would put this S. A part of me even wants to put it in SS, but I think S is fair. I think S is fair because motion control is like that's a huge, yeah, that sucks. But it was fine in this game, so I think S is fair. Next up, we got another one whose title I can't pronounce, nor do I remember it. I think it was like 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐬𝐴, Tamashi, something like that. I don't know. This game was terrible. I feel like this might have just slipped under a lot of people's radars because when people talk about bad Bleach games, Shattered Blade is usually one of the ones being talked about. No one really ever talks about this one, so I just don't think enough people played it to realize how terrible it is. But this game sucked. I guess I could say it's another one that's just really a product of time. And at the time, it was probably something great. It was probably something decent. I think this was... Is this the first? This was the first Bleach game, right? The first one ever on consoles. And of course, being the first one, it held it back in a lot of ways. This game was just... This is more dated than the GameCube game that I rated earlier. This is just pretty bad. The gameplay is stiff, clunky, it's slow. There's a cool little tag switch thing that you can do where you can combo from one character to another character. And that's like the best thing about the gameplay, but aside from that, it just, whoa, I was not feeling it whatsoever. Like I said, to me the worst thing a game could be is boring, and this one was boring. I can't say that about Shattered Blade. Shattered Blade was not boring. It's pretty bad, but it wasn't boring. This was boring. So, I know a lot of y'all might disagree with this one, but I gotta put it in the trash tier. I was just not feeling that game whatsoever. But moving on, next up we got Soul Carnival 1 and Soul Carnival 2. What more can I say about these games that I haven't said already? I'm gonna just throw them both up there automatically because best Bleach games I've played in this whole series. I know that's gonna sound crazy. Look, if you go back and watch the videos, you'll hear my opinions there. You'll see why. You'll get more of an explanation as to why. But gameplay, character variety, visuals, look, this style of game is just so charming to me. I'm old school like that. I like games that look like this. What more can I say? It's just, these games were like catered to me, honest. And not to mention, they have a sizable amount of content in both of these games. There's a lot of characters to go around, a lot of ways to level them up, a lot of missions to clear. There's so much to do. These are just overall great games. Now, I can't sing their praises enough. These are easily some of the best Bleach games, if not the best Bleach games ever made until Rebirth of Souls is finally out. But anywho, next up we got the Heat the Soul series, which is kind of a tricky one for me to go through because, like, I would say Heat the Soul 1, not very good. Simple as that, not that good. Heat the Soul 2, improved on a lot of the things Heat the Soul 1 was doing, right? I think that's pretty straightforward and fair to say. Heat the Soul 3 came along and was pretty much the same game as Heat the Soul 2, but it had some minor tweaks and differences here. I think Heat the Soul 3 was the one that had, like, the sparks fly when swords clash. I thought that was a really cool, neat attention to detail. And aside from that, they were virtually the same game still, but Heat the Soul 3 is better, so I guess I'll put it ahead. Heat the Soul 4 comes around and does exactly what Heat the Soul 3 did, but I guess better. Then Heat the Soul 5 just did what 4 did, but better. And then 6 did what 5 did, but better. And then 7 did what 6 did, but better. There was very minimal gameplay changes between these titles. It's just minor adjustments, but they are improvement. Like, every game is better than the last in some area. Graphics didn't change, the rosters just got bigger, the gameplay's got minor tweaks. When it's all said and done, these are all virtually the same game that's just slightly better than the last. But overall, I would say that this is a fair ranking here. Next up is the RPG, that another one that I can't really pronounce and don't remember the title of. It was very Japanese. And I just want to throw it in trash immediately. I immediately just want to throw this in trash. But I don't think that would be fair. I would say all the issues I had with this game come from own personal biases. For one, it's a turn-based RPG. Now, I like turn-based RPGs, but I like more interactive turn-based RPGs. Ones where there's like just a lot more thought involved than just picking an attack and, you know, having a character that does their attack before the enemy does and you win. At least as far as I've played, which admittedly was not a lot. I think I only played for like 2 hours, maybe less, hour and a half. I don't remember. If you're wondering what sort of turn-based RPGs I like, some good examples would be like Metaphor, a more recent example, and other examples would be like Fire Emblem games. The first Fairy Tail game, even the first Fairy Tail game was turn-based. I love that game. Like, I don't have any gripes with turn-based in of itself. It's just the way this game handled it that was just so painfully boring. And then not to mention the world structure and the way you had to progress the story, where it was just so much walking back and forth, which, yeah, walking around is a standard for RPGs, but in this game, it was like, there's only like 3 maps that you can actually go to, and you just constantly had to walk from one map to the next, back to the other one, and then go back to the next. It was just constant back and forth. I didn't like that one bit. This may be another controversial pick, but I'm going to put that one in trash. I'm sorry. I did not like it one bit, and I know that game had an original story, and that original story is probably good, but I don't know because language barriers. So if I had more time with the game, and I could understand the story, I probably would put it a lot higher. But for where things are right now, I'm just going to put it right there. I'm sorry. But now we can tackle the DS games and that one Game Boy Advance game. I'm putting that one in trash. If you've seen me play it, you understand. Then the first real Bleach fighting game to ever exist, The Blade of Fate. I think I will put this one in A. For one, this is definitely, out of all of these games that are fighting games, this is the best one. This is the one that's most like an actual fighting game. The 𝐒𝐼𝐧𝐝 series tried, but it was also a 3D anime fighter at its core, so it couldn't really touch the intricacies of a traditional fighting game. Whereas The Blade of Fate just is straight up a fighting game. Now, I do have my issues with it, like the fact that your character can just turn around every time you want to input a half circle, because you can turn away from your opponent in this game. But aside from gripes like that, it's a well put together game with a decent roster, and it's one of the few Bleach games that was released overseas, so you know what, I'll take it. I like The Blade of Fate, I think it's pretty good. And then we have its direct sequel, Dark Souls, which is kinda hard for me to rank because, like I explained, I don't like how much gimmicky crap they added to it, but at the same time, the fact that they added more content to an already pretty decent game is not a bad thing. So I can't in good faith rank it any lower than The Blade of Fate, but I can humbly say that all that extra side content they add sucks. So I think it's fair to still put it in A, but yeah, I'm keeping The Blade of Fate above it just because The Blade of Fate didn't have that gimmicky crap. The third Phantom is another one that's pretty hard for me to rank. I didn't play much of it, but from what I did play, I do like it a lot because it's just like Fire Emblem. This is an example of turn-based RPG that I do like. It's just like Fire Emblem, and I like it for that. It's fun, it's tactical, and it actually has a pretty interesting story. It's an original story with original characters that's just set in the world of Bleach, and I didn't get far enough to see where it goes, but I'd say the beginning of the game does a good job at presenting questions that you want to get answered, and it pulls you in and makes you want to keep going. Now, I haven't kept going yet for many reasons, but I think the way this game handles itself is great. And if I'm being quite honest, I'm biased here. I like RPGs more than fighting games, so I'm going to put this one in S. And last up in the DS cycle, we have Flamebringer. This one is honestly a hit or miss. It kind of depends on my mood. Because the first time I played it, which wasn't actually in the video that you guys seen, that would be my second time playing it. I played this last year or the year before, long time ago. And I had a blast playing this game. I especially enjoyed playing 𝐤𝐤𝐬𝐞 and Renji. But when I played it again for the video, I didn't really have much fun. I even remember saying that I loved the Rukia boss fight the first time I played it, and then in that video I was like, wait, why did I like the Rukia boss fight? This is actually pretty boring. So I don't know why my opinion changed so drastically just from not playing it for like a year. At its core, I do think it's a well put together decent game, but the strong positive feelings I had towards it kind of just vanished. I'm not sure why, but it just, the last time I played it, I really just did not have that good of a time. 𝐼𝐤𝐬𝐿 still sucks to play as, 𝐤𝐤𝐬𝐿 is the all-arounder, and Renji is also just kind of there out of the characters I played. Now, if Byakuya is in this game and he's playable, he's probably great. I haven't gotten that far, but I do want to keep playing it and see if Byakuya is playable at least, or see if he's in the game at all. But until that time comes, I can only really rank this based on the experiences I've had, and I guess I would put this in B. I think B is a fair slot, because it's not that great, but it's not terrible either. It's very mid. I think mid is a fair assessment for this, so I would say B or C. works perfectly there. And I would put it in B just because I do think it's genuinely better than the games below it, but it's just nothing great. Now we got the Blade Battler games. Now, Blade Battlers was a lot of fun, admittedly, with my only real gripes being the combo speed and movement speed in general, actually. But aside from that, I really didn't have much complaints at all with this game. It was fun, decent roster, another good roster, which this game stops at Soul Society, if memory serves me right, and it's the second game that goes up into the Arrancar arc. So with that in mind, I think both these games have pretty sizable rosters for the arcs they're covering, despite the fact that they both have, what, no. The first one has an original story, and it's kind of like OVAs in a way. They're like filler episodes, because they have nothing to do with the rest of the plot of Bleach, and it all seems to be completely random. Like, Renji's story mode just had everyone mad at him for something, and I don't know what that something was because I don't speak Japanese. But yeah, for the most part, it just seemed like a bunch of filler episodes, which may or may not be a good thing. You know, if they were well told, then that would be a bonus. It's not inherently a bad thing to have non-canon content in your video game. But again, language barrier, so I don't know how good that story was. But we're not here to rank stories, we're here to rate gameplay, and gameplay-wise, I say that this game is fairly good. As a matter of fact, I would say it's decent, right? I would say it's solid. It's solid. I would put it in A, just because Blade Battlers 2 would be the better of the two. And I think Blade Battlers 2 does make enough adjustments to warrant it being in a separate tier, unlike, say, Heat the Souls 4 through 7. Now, in my video, I did say that I didn't feel much of a difference between the games, but I did go back to it after the fact, and I did notice how the second game does improve on the speed issues I was having with the first one, and the second game actually follows the events of the manga, I think, because we have Ichigo's mini training arc with the 𝐎𝐼𝐧𝐝, that's in the game. We have him fighting Zangetsu in his inner world, that's in the game. Yami and 𝐤𝐼𝐬𝐽 popping up to Karakura Town, that's in the game, so I think that actually follows the story. While the first game just had a bunch of original content that essentially worked like a filler, the second game is actually adapting the source material, and that's always a bonus to me. When it's all said and done, Blade Battlers 2 is the better of the two, so I'm putting it one rank above. And last but not least, my personal favorite Bleach game that's not the Soul Carnival games, and that's Bleach Soul Resurrection, which is the one a lot of people have played. For better or for worse, I think Soul Resurrection is like the game that people think about when they think about Bleach games, because it was the last one, and it was the last one for so long, mind you. But to be quite honest, it's not that good. I don't know why on Metacritic it's scored equal to Shattered Blade, because it's not nearly as bad as Shattered Blade, not whatsoever. But it's also really not that great of a game. This is one of the Bleach games that does adapt the source material, but it adapts it so poorly that it may as well not even have bothered. Like, this is the sort of game that probably would have benefited from an original story, because it tells the story of Bleach so painfully, awfully. Now granted, this game was made for Bleach fans. Bleach fans would know the story already. Still, even in that sense, from my perspective, I just don't think there's any use in adapting the source material when you want to adapt it that badly. Right? Now, it could have been budgeting reasons, time reasons, who knows. But when it's all said and done, the story for this game was terrible. And then we have the roster. The roster, I would argue, is a decent size. Like, it's kinda okay in size. The problem is that every character is essentially already in their awakened forms, if you will, which keeps them from having more in-depth movesets. For instance, let's say 𝐤𝐼𝐬𝐽, right? You will never get to play as 𝐤𝐼𝐬𝐽 using a sword because he is always in Segunda Etapa. Any moves you've ever seen 𝐤𝐼𝐬𝐽 pull off before he entered Segunda Etapa is just straight up not in the game, because he does not do them. Aside from Zero, but you know, he does that in Segunda Etapa anyway. And that same thing just applies to all the characters. Stark is another one who's already in his resurrection, so you will never see Stark use his sword. And to be fair, Stark did fight primarily in Resurrection. He didn't fight all that much, you know, outside of it. But still, other games like Soul Carnival 2, for instance, have Stark using his sword, and he is awesome. Meanwhile, Soul Resurrection couldn't be bothered. And another issue that comes with that is, for one, this game does not have that good of a combat system. Now, even as far as Musos or Muso knockoffs, if you will, this game's combat system is just not that deep. and it's not that good. And even then, when this combat system is at its best, it's specific. It's for specific characters like 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐝. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐝 can do a whole lot in this game that a lot of other characters just can't do. These characters are not all made equally. Like 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳, for instance, is one of the worst characters in this game because he's just, like, if you want a character with good range, you're not going to pick 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳. If you want a character with good speed, with good movement speed, you're not going to pick 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳. If you want a character with good combo speed, you're not going to pick 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳. 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳 is like the worst character in this game, and it's so weird that they did that. But that just brings me back to my main point, being that the characters are not made equal, and every character just has one form. So if you're playing like one form of the character, and he sucks, there's no transformation, there's no second form, there's no alternate state to go in. Like, imagine if Monster 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳 was playable, and so the default 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳 was trash, but Monster 𝐼𝐳𝐼𝐳 was really good. That would kind of offset that issue a little bit, but that's just not the case. Because every character is just in an awakened form, and they all suck. Well, no, I shouldn't say they all suck, that's a lie. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐝's really good, but some of the characters suck. And the ones that do suck, there's nothing you can do about it because there's only one form for each. And then there's the fact that there's some characters that are just missing, like Renji. How is Renji not in this game? My headcanon is they didn't put him in this game because his Bankai was too big to make playable. That's what I always thought, and that's what I'm going to keep thinking until a developer comes out and says otherwise. But when it's all said and done, I think Soul Resurrection deserves A. As much as I love Soul Resurrection, I can't sit here and act like it's better than it really is, because it's not. It's just one of those turn your brain off and have fun sort of games for me. And I love hack and slash games. That's one of my favorite genres, like Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, those sort of games, Musos in general, love them to death. But I can confidently say that if Soul Resurrection was not a Bleach game, and it was just a game for like some other franchise that I don't care about or I'm just not into or dislike entirely, if it was any other franchise, but it played the same and had the same core issues, I would not like this game whatsoever. So yeah, that brings us to a close. I have just ranked every single Bleach game, and I made this template myself, but I did also make it public, so I will put a link to it in the description. If you want to make your own Bleach games tier list, you can feel free to share it with me, at me on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, at @TeamSkinny_. And while you're at it, feel free to tell me how awful my opinions are, because that's what everyone else loves to do these days. Now, I did add Rebirth of Souls here just because, I mean, it's right around the corner. It'll be out next month, and I won't make a whole nother video, but I'll probably revisit this tier list just to see where I would rank Rebirth of Souls. So far, based on the trailers and the information we got on the game, I'm leaning toward SS. If I had to guess, I think Bleach Rebirth of Souls is going to be right there for me. It might not, it might be higher for all I know, you know? But until we get there, I obviously can't rank Rebirth of Souls. I haven't played it. But I digress. If you like this video, a thumbs up would be most appreciated. By all means, feel free to comment below telling me how you would rank these Bleach games. And yeah, I'll catch you guys whenever.